Okay, welcome everybody to this working from home and work-based anxiety, managing difficult conversations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Just a quick reminder, if it's not already happening, but just to mute your microphone, switch off your video, but please do use the chat function or raise your hand function if you've got a particular point or issue that you want to make as we go through. Also, if you've got specific questions that you'd like answers to, please do use the Q&A function that you should all have along the bottom of your screen as well. Ask us as you go. There's a few of us who are facilitating this evening, so we can keep an eye on the chat and the Q&As as they come in, but we should also have some time at the end for some questions as well. So just a quick introduction to the three people that you can see across the top of your screen. My name's Dr. Elaine Yerby. I'm a senior lecturer in HRM practice at the London School of Economics. I'm also involved in the East London and Docklands branch of the CIPD, and we ran this event in London on the 30th of April. It feels quite different already. A lot's been happening, which are themes that we'll pick up and talk about and reflect on as we go through. But also Jill Bramner from the Resound Training and Development, who will introduce herself a bit more when we get to her sort of interactive section of the presentation. And I know many of you know Julie from Burkitt's Long, and she'll pick up the sort of the legal implications of the issues that we're exploring this evening. So just in terms of what this event is for and the key things that we're going to be covering, we're really thinking about working from home strategies, and in particular managing people to help reduce work-based anxiety. And crucially now, which is a little bit different from where we were at the end of April, is supporting the reintegration of people into the workplace, whenever that may be. For different organizations are moving at different paces, but it certainly feels that we're into the next stage now from the government policy perspective, but also organizational thinking and a new emphasis in terms of reintegration to the workplace. So the first part of the event is just going to reflect really in terms of the current picture for working from home, previous research and best practice that we know in relation to effective strategies for working from home. And then we're into this sort of practical examples where you'll see some role play in terms of how to do it well and how to do it less well, and we'll be looking for your input in that section. And as we say at the end, Julie's going to pick up these wider issues around issues to do with working from home during COVID and post-COVID, and issues of workplace integration. I thought Julie was raising her hand, but no, we're fine. We're good to go. Yeah, and as I say, please ask us questions as we go along in the chat or in the Q&A. We're happy to pick that up. Well, of course, we know what has taken place over the last few months. We've seen what can only really be described as a seismic shift in relation to working from home. So to what we saw this time last year, there was approximately 1.7 million people working from home on what could be described as a regular basis, to last month, approximately 20 million people working from home. So a very significant shift. And we know that, much of our planning and our processes in place for working from home tended to lag behind other Western European nations. And in fact, the ONS and other organizations had commented that the UK was among the world's least prepared for working from home in terms of the scale that we've moved to. Not least because of that 1.7 million people that were working from home, a very large majority of those people, 75%, tended to only do that 1 day a week. So what we're talking about in terms of people that were regularly working from home, the percentage of these are very small. We know also that they're dominated in particular industries and actually geographical regions as well, with the Southeast. We're in a lucky position with the Southeast being one of the geographical areas where we see much higher incidence of working from home than we do in the Northeast, Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. Contrary to some of the perspectives that we have on working from home, actually we've always had quite an equal gender split between men and women. Not the same for other types of flexible working, such as part-time working, etc. But actually we previously, the ONS figures suggest that men and women have worked from home in relatively equal numbers. We also know you're more likely to work from home if you're aged 40 and above as well. So that was kind of the picture prior to that. So why hadn't we been working from home more? Up to 2019, we'd seen this very gradual creep up in terms of small incremental growth in the number of people working from home. But in the UK, we know we suffer from issues of lack of trust, significant issues or doubts around technological and security concerns. And we know there's the research that shows problems around social isolation and when teams are dispersed and remote, that this can curb issues of innovation. This is also sort of interconnected with issues of presenteeism, and in the UK we know that we've got a long hours working culture. So these are the types of factors that have prevented working from home in the past to sort of what we could describe as European comparisons, and concerns again from the business that employees can be disconnected from the strategic direction. And so whilst we know actually that men and women were working from home in relatively equal numbers, there are gendered associations with this, and sort of assumptions that it was women who worked from home rather than men, and it suffered from similar connotations to other forms of flexible working, where we know men are much less likely to request forms of flexible working, of which working from home is one of those. But so we've seen this seismic shift, 20 million people, which for many organizations probably felt like overnight we were working from home. And actually emerging research is starting to suggest that actually, well, many organizations have handled this quite well. So this is a survey of 1,000 UK workers who had previously never worked from home before. And we can see from these statistics that many employees do feel that their employers have handled this work transition pretty well. 3/4 of employees reporting that they believe their managers trust them to be just as productive from home. And these sort of self-reports from individuals suggesting that actually they feel just as productive or equally productive from home as well. But in terms of sort of previous research and what we know about working from home from the sort of 1.7 million who were doing it previously, that there are issues connected with this. And one of the perhaps statistics to be aware of is that we know that people tend to peak in terms of working from home and in terms of their productivity in the early stages of moving to working from home, and then longer patterns for working from home require sort of adjustments and reflections in relation to the extent to which productivity levels remain. And so yeah, we know that there's issues on the horizons already, and early snapshot surveys in terms of the experience of people from working home currently, as many of you may feel very familiar with, the internet and technology issues feel like one of the biggest impediments to our productivity while we're remote working. And this is interesting, 31% of employees are less satisfied with new processes that employers are introducing to check on people's outputs, and this can really hamper trust and feelings of sort of engagement and commitment as well. And also 44% people starting to feel that their opinions are unheard or valued less than if they were having them in face-to-face meetings. So these are issues to consider as your arrangements for working from home continue and certainly become part of sort of work integration plans going forward. So whether there's a phased return in terms of some people working from home for a week or a proportion of the week, and some people in the office, and then vice versa. Issues of productivity over the long term and how people have their voice and trust continue to be important, and to reflect on those issues. Other issues to consider, and coming sort of forward to the topic that we're really thinking about today around work-based anxiety, is some of the sort of the emotional and physical impacts of working from home. And clearly we're in unprecedented times, and some people, what we've dealt with here is sort of managing a crisis. Many people are homeschooling as well as working from home. And unsurprisingly, we're starting to see people feel that they're very unhappy with their work-life balance. High self-reports, again, of people working longer hours and irregular hours, logging on at times where they never would have felt comfortable logging on in the past. Feelings of self-isolation, which is what we see with sort of standard forms of working from home, but also perhaps related to wider anxieties around COVID-19, about suffering loss of sleep, alcohol-related incidents going up, drinking, ways of sort of alleviating stress, eating less less healthily, and less exercise as well. And so again, this sort of leads to issues around back pain, and we know that the transition for many people from working to home, where they didn't have the right setup, desks, appropriate space in which to work, and that's an issue that Julie will pick up later in the presentation around requirements for employers in relation to their sort of health and safety within the workplace. And again, something that Julie will very much, and actually it will come out in the role plays that we'll turn to in a moment, that, you know, everybody's experience of working from home currently really depends on a much broader set of contextual factors in relation to how they're experiencing the current crisis, related to their health issues, family members, homeschooling responsibilities, etc. So there's contextual factors that individuals have been facing as such a significant consideration in relation to anxiety and the experiences that people are having in relation to that currently. And certainly now, as we move into what can be described as a new phase in terms of governmental level policy for managing the pandemic, attention does turn to what comes next. And of course, this can also raise issues for anxiety for employees. So we've heard large organizations such as Barclays and Twitter announce that they see it very unlikely that all of their workforce will ever return to working in their previous workplaces on the scale that they were doing previously. But so these large sort of announcements, but we know that employees don't necessarily trust their employers to implement a significant change in flexible work policies long term as a result of this COVID crisis. And so, yeah, half of employees saying that their employer would drop working from home as soon as the COVID pandemic is over. So some people that are enjoying working from home and actually finding it helping in terms of their work-life balance are perhaps feeling some anxiety around what will this mean for me going into the future. The good news is that 28% of people from, this is the same survey of the 1,000 UK workers who'd previously never worked from home before, they felt that there will be some change in terms of that their employers won't go back to being as inflexible as they were prior to the COVID. So some positive news there as well. But of course, we know with anxiety that, and workplace anxiety in particular, that it's increased during periods of uncertainty, unknowns, instability, and currently those clearly issues that we're experiencing now, and can increase feelings of anxiety. So in the sense that the brain doesn't quite know how to brace itself for what's coming next. And so issues of sort of flight or fight, which is significant in individuals' experiences of anxiety, are ever present within their working lives. And we know as humans, we prefer, not always, but certainty contributes to our feelings of psychological safety and helps us feel in a sense of control. When of course, we know that even our leaders in government, in organizations, can't provide us with that certainty. It is important to reflect on the anxiety that our employees will be experiencing at that time, and this heightened sense of uncertainty and what that means. So if we think of anxiety as this very sort of an umbrella term for feelings of fear, nervousness, apprehensiveness, or worry, really does categorize in many ways what individual employees could be feeling in relation to the next stages and coming out of working from home and reintegration into the workplace. And so, I mean, it's important in this context to reflect that, of course, many of these anxious feelings are normal and help us to function in terms of to be effective, but they can be damaging when it's happening too often, it goes on for a long time, and when it starts us to prevent us doing things that we want to do. And so again, as we go through the role plays, we'll see degrees of anxiety, and again, what managers and workplaces can be doing to support individuals as we sort of experience these uncertain times. So, I mean, just before we move into the role play, just added this section in terms of who feeling anxious. I don't know if you've got access to the chat function there, but just maybe just feelings of anxiousness about sort of the thought of the reintegration into the workplace. I don't know if anybody willing to share sort of, again, as we say, sort of very natural feelings of anxiety. I'm not sure I can see the chat actually. Yeah. Or, I mean, I'd also, so thinking about that, do you have a clear picture about how your workforce feels about returning to the workplace as well? And again, I think this is an important part of sort of HR approaches and strategies going forward, about really thinking about understanding about how your workforce are feeling. And a crucial question for organizations: how comfortable will your employees feel about speaking to their manager in relation to returning to the workplace as well? So do you feel confident in your organizational climate that where people have significant anxieties and worries about returning to the workplace, that they're going to be able to receive the support that they require here? And actually, Jill, I know, is going to mention this as well, but of course we're in Mental Health Awareness Week. And again, prior to going into the crisis, we know that there was often a culture of fear and silence about speaking about issues of anxiety and mental health within the workplace. So 30% of staff disagreed with a statement from a large-scale survey from Mind. I would feel able to talk openly to my line manager if I was feeling stressed or anxious. So again, it's an important time to be reflecting on the sort of the openness and the transparency of approaches to managing employees' and anxieties and stress at this time. As we know, again, stark statistics here: 42% of people considered resigning in relation to workplace stress that has affected them. And worryingly, 56% of employers said they would like to do more to improve staff wellbeing, but don't feel they have the right training or guidance in order to do that. And so we're going to look at some role plays now from Resound Training and Development, which hopefully help to explore really, as much as employee assistance programs are important, but also behaviours and attitudes of managers and the difference that they can make in terms of helping to manage people's stress and anxieties at this time. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. Thanks, Elaine. And yes, welcome everybody. Really pleased to be with you this evening. So at Resound Training and Development, we provide a wide range of learning and development. That's all workplace training, but we are also specialists in drama-based learning. And for many years now, we've been delivering live workshops and events with our team of professional actors. And as you can imagine, we pivoted very quickly during March to using Zoom and other platforms in order to be able to provide virtual events. Okay, let me move my chat box. Let's see if I can. Elaine, could you move us on, please, on the slides? Thank you. So what we're going to do this evening is show a 6-minute video in a moment with 3 characters, Maxine, Hannah and Keith. I just want to give you the backstory, because what we do is that we create fictional stories, but obviously we have done some research and they're based on actual examples out in the field. But our backstory for this evening is this. Maxine is Head of Finance and Administration for a company that we've called Loxtonbury Data Services. So that's a fictional company. And her team are working from home and their teams have been furloughed. And we're going to see Maxine in our getting it wrong version of this scene, really struggling to manage 2 of her team, Hannah and Keith. And she makes some very common mistakes. Now, fortunately, Maxine, Hannah and Keith, they're all on this call with us this evening. So once we've played the video, you'll be able to ask the 3 characters questions and hopefully give Maxine some really good advice on what she needs to do differently. We'll also discuss the implications of her approach, and Julie will pick up on this a bit later as well. Okay, do use the chat box to make comments during the video, and if you've got particular questions which you think would be really good to put to Maxine, do put them in the Q&A section. We will pick up on those. So we're going to play you the 6-minute video where Maxine gets it wrong, and then we will come back and pick up then. Thank you.
All being well. This is where my stress.
Hi Hannah, how's it going?
Yeah, okay.
Good. Now I need to talk to you about your work because over the last couple of weeks it's become clear that you're getting behind.
Oh, am I? I suppose I could be a bit.
Hannah, I'm sorry to have to be firm about this, but it is more than a bit. Now I realise that these are strange times for all of us, but I have picked up a lot of the slack. I had to finish the budget setting last month, remember? And I've been speaking to other team members. They're really feeling the strain because they're taking on other work that you would normally do.
Like what?
Like managing individual accounts, reviewing and auditing the statements, preparation of data for reporting, all of which is out of their remit, strictly speaking. So I thought it best to speak directly to you, find out what's going on.
Well, it's just this working from home life. I'm just finding it really hard. I've never done it before. Senior management have never let us do it before.
I know it takes some people longer to adjust than others, but it has been weeks now. You know, you're online, so your broadband's good, you're safe. There are more hours in the day because there's no commuting, and you haven't been furloughed. So I hope you don't mind me saying, but I've had to have words with some team members about their appearance and sort of setting themselves up a decent working space. Maybe that's something that you could think about.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I've told you, but I've moved back in with my parents because they need a little bit of looking after. They're both over 70 and Dad's got the early stages of dementia and Mum's got asthma, you know.
Well, it's good that you've got each other.
Yeah, but it means I have to do all the shopping and help my mum care for my dad. And I keep hearing on the news about companies going into administration. I mean, is this going to happen to us?
No one knows quite what the future holds, but if we all pull our weight, it will be less likely.
What if it does? Then what will I do?
And I don't have all the answers. All I know is that we still need to get the work done. Okay, so I'm going to put a check-in in our diaries every morning at around 9:30 a.m. and again at 4:30 p.m. And I'm going to email you over a timesheet that's for you to fill out so that I can see where your time is being spent, yeah? Just so that we can keep a track of what's going on.
You don't need to do that. I'll be fine, I promise.
Well, that is for you to prove over the next couple of weeks. But until then, I will be in touch frequently to keep an eye, okay?
Okay, that feels a bit OTT, but...
Listen, why don't you give HR a call if you've got any concerns? They'd want to know if you're struggling with your workload, okay?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Stay safe. Hi, Keith. How's it going?
Fine. What can I do for you this time?
I just wanted to ask how you're getting on with that report for.
We'll have to know when it's ready.
Okay. Keith, is everything okay?
Like I said when you called, and in the team meeting this morning, and every time you called, it's all fine. I'm fine.
Have I done something to upset you? Because if I have, then I think it's important we address it and talk about how we move forward.
Crying out loud. Max, look, don't take this the wrong way, but I just need you to leave me alone. Right, I can do this job standing on my head, and I've done it for over a year. But suddenly you're on the phone or requesting video meetings with me to see where I'm at. And to be frank, it's only constantly looming over my shoulder.
But I'm so sorry that you feel like that. I don't mean to. If we're being honest, it is very difficult when you haven't got everybody in one place, and I would hate to think that anybody was stressed or struggling and needs support.
I hear you, Maxine, but please just try and see it from my point of view. I've been asking for months if I could work from home for a couple of days a week, but it's always just been a flat no.
Yes, but that is because...
I know, I get that the organisation itself does not support working from home, but then virtually overnight, we're expected to do just that. It's no wonder people are struggling and need support. I'm not one of them.
Please try to remember that I do have senior management breathing down my neck. Maybe that's why I keep checking in. if we're being honest, with 6 staff that report directly to me, has taken up so much of my time that I'm working until about 8 o'clock every night to get through everything. What can I do?
Well, how about you put some trust in me? I'll get on with the job a lot quicker without you keep checking in on me. If I need anything at all, I'll guarantee you'll be the first to know.
Okay. Point taken.
Thanks, Maxine. Bye for now.
Bye, Keith. So now I'm wondering if they all feel like that.
Okay, thanks for sorting the play out there, Julie. We've had some fantastic comments and questions as we've been going along, which is brilliant. So I'm now going to ask Maxine, Hannah and Keith to join us, if you would like to. There we are. There, that's it. Excellent. So I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A and the chat, and I'm going to put some of your questions now to Maxine. And if you've got questions that you would like put to Hannah or Keith, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. So Maxine, so we've got a comment here from somebody saying that maybe you could have started your conversation with Hannah by asking how she was, and some comments around the sort of lack of empathy. Do you feel that you manage Hannah and Keith very differently?
Well, yes, I do feel I manage them differently because they're different people. That, you know, they're Keith is quite abrasive. He's quite rude. He seems to resent being managed, to be perfectly honest. Whereas Hannah's a bit of a tricky one at the moment because she was doing really well when we first moved to working at home. For, I don't know, the first month she was just amazing, and I don't know whether there's a lot. We're under some very difficult circumstances, I realise that, but what I'm seeing is that her productivity is going down, which is having an impact not just on myself but on other staff, and that's a worry. But she was fine in the first, I would say, roughly 4 weeks. And Keith, you know, to be honest, he's not that communicative even when we are in the office, so it doesn't surprise me that he is even less so now. He seems to resent being managed at all.
So Jackie Cliff has given us a good question here for both Hannah and Keith, saying, how do you feel after that conversation? And what would you have liked Maxine to have asked or said? So let me go to Hannah first. How did you feel after that conversation with Maxine when she checked up?
She's just not listening to me. That's what I felt. You know, I was very anxious last month, and what was looking after my parents, you know, essentially being a carer, and she just didn't take that on board at all. So that was quite upsetting. Yeah, and since then I don't know what's going on with the company. I'm still worried about, you know, I've heard rumours that, you know, the company's going to go bust, and, you know, people are going to be made redundant. I've got so many things whizzing around my head, and Maxine just doesn't help because she's I know she's on the call, so it's a bit embarrassing, but she's just not listening to me. Okay, so what would you have liked her to have said to you or asked? Just to ask, like, really ask me out how I am, and for her to be like genuinely have some care in the way that she deals with us, because, you know, to put herself in our shoes when she's asking the questions, you know, and not just going through the motions, you know, it's not good enough. Okay, thank you. And Keith, how did you feel after
speaking to Maxine?
Well, I don't feel in the least resentful about being managed, quite frankly. I do feel resentful about people constantly phoning me up, stopping me doing my job because they've got IT problems. Now, I just want to confirm that I'm not the IT guy, I'm a data analyst. But all through this lockdown, at every step of the way, I've had people phoning me up for the most bizarre and banal IT problems. And it's just not fair. I'm not getting my work done. I've got people breathing down my neck the whole time, and I'm just not getting what I need to get done.
Okay, so there's some comments in here about whether you've got the capability of being a team player. Do you think you're a team player?
Oh, that's ridiculous. You know, I'm good at my job. I can let Maxine, you know, Maxine was off for 2 months and we managed the whole place and we had no problems at all. And suddenly she comes back. She hasn't got a clue what she's doing. She's breathing down my neck every 2 minutes. She's phoning me up sort of 5, 6, 7 times a day, wanting to know what I'm doing, just because she's going from pillar to post, trying to find out, trying to keep up with her workload. It's just ridiculous. And now, not only am I dealing with her IT problems, I've got like her family's IT problems. And she phoned me up the other day, and she's having a go at me because her Wi-Fi is dropping out. She wants to know why her Wi-Fi is not working. Now, I've got some direct line to Talk, and I can sort it out for her. I don't know why her Wi-Fi is not working. Why is she asking me about it?
Okay, Keith, let's just pause you there for a moment, because I feel like you're going to just go on a complete rant there. Maxine, let's bring you back into the conversation. What's your response to these comments about how you're managing Hannah to start with around the lack of care?
Yeah, so okay, I'll take some of that on board. I suppose because I've got, and I do have people breathing down my neck about why things are not being done, why, and so you're trying at the same time. I've got people coming from above, what's happening here, and then I've got somebody coming in from the side saying, I've had to do this again. I've had to work until 7:30 getting that finished. What's going on? So I have got all of that, and as I said, she was performing really well. She isn't anymore. I don't know exactly. I know she's mentioned now about being worried about being, you know, the company going under and everything. I don't know where she's got that from, because all the way through I have tried to be as positive as I can, but without making promises, which I can't make. But I do see that, you know, possibly I need to look into, you know, what's going on with her that might be affecting her ability to work. But one of the other things that's really, really hard, if I'm going to be honest here, is that I usually manage a team of 6. Now, 2 of them were furloughed immediately, and then 1 of them was furloughed a month in. She worked on a project for us, and when that came to an end, she was furloughed. And yet I've got those people constantly in contact with me saying to me, you know, I'm sitting at home, is there anything I could be doing? Don't forget, if there is work, you can take me off furlough. I've even had one of them say to me, if there's anything, I don't mind doing reduced hours for reduced money. And I've got all of that going on, whilst staff who haven't been furloughed aren't kind of seeing that they're in a better place than those sitting at home worrying about their jobs, worrying about their security going forward. So, you know, it is quite, it's very intense. But yes, okay, I do take on board that I need to talk to Hannah about what's going on with her. It may be that she would rather have been furloughed. I don't know. That might have worked better for her. So maybe those are conversations that needs to happen. We don't have anybody directly to replace her, if you like, but it might be that we can sort something out if that's what she needs, or if she wanted to do reduced hours. Unfortunately, it's not a sort of pick and choose situation, is it? So I can't bring my call centre manager back to do a finance job.
Okay,
yeah,
well, someone's made a really good point in the comments there about the danger of making assumptions. So I guess we've got to be careful about that, haven't we? So let's ask Hannah then. So Hannah, what is the, you know, is there a specific issue that you need help with in terms of working from home? What's going on for you?
Well, it's the main thing, the reason I was doing well, you're right, but the main thing is that I don't think Maxine's being honest with me, because, you know, I've heard through sort of, you know, work WhatsApp groups that, you know, that if people are made redundant, certain people are going to be the first ones to be made redundant. And it's just, my anxiety through the roof because I don't think she's being honest. She's not telling us all the truth. She's not communicating to all of us. She's only communicating to her friends on what, you know, and not to the rest of us.
What makes you think that? What's that based on?
There was a WhatsApp message group between us, everyone that's on Maxine's team, and someone made a comment, I won't say who, saying that that they were going to be the first to be made redundant when the company goes down. So if that's what's happening and you're only telling some people and not others, then I've got a right to be upset about that.
Did you know about that, Maxine?
No. I'm not in that group. I don't know who said it. I don't know where they've got it from. I have treated every single staff member that report to me fairly in that respect. If I know anything, they know it. If they've got something from somewhere else, that's, you know, no, I didn't know about that. I didn't know, and I don't know anything. No one has told me that there will be redundancies. No one has even intimated it.
Okay, right, and I guess that's part of the real struggle with the uncertainty, isn't it, for everybody in this situation?
Yeah.
Okay. Maxine, there have been some comments too on what support you're getting. So what's your support from your line manager like?
I think my face probably just said it all, didn't it? No, I don't like talking about people behind their backs particularly. As far as my manager's concerned, we're all on Easy Street now because we don't have any commuting, and we can, to some extent, pick and choose our hours. In other words, if we want to sit down and work from 7:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, that's fine. Equally, if we don't want to turn up till 10, that's fine, as long as we get everything done. But I don't think my manager is at all thinking about the reality of it, is that actually some things take a lot longer because that person isn't next to you or just along the corridor. Those things that you can resolve very quickly can sometimes take, what I can resolve sometimes in maybe 30 seconds when we're in the office can take me 20 to 30 minutes to resolve because I'm trying to get hold of somebody. You know, you can't have those instant conversations that keep you ticking over all day. And I don't think he appreciates that. His function is to have people to report to him, would appear to be you. And most of the people who report to him have been furloughed.
Right.
So
there's a lack of support there for you, which is another issue. Now, Keith, we seem to have some split views around you this evening. So some people saying that they're concerned that you can't take instructions from your manager, and other people thinking that maybe you've got a point.
You know, I'm just trying to get my work done. I'm sorry if I come across as a bit rude, but you know, we've been managing without her for months on end, and suddenly she comes back in and she's just causing more problems than she's solving. You know,
when you say you've been managing for months on end, what are you referring to?
Well, she was off for 2 months, so we had to cope without her, and since she's been back, it's just been chaos, quite frankly.
So Maxine, you were off for a couple of months, Keith is saying.
I was actually off for slightly longer than that following surgery. I'm totally happy to tell everybody why, if we think that sharing that will help. But what Keith is failing to acknowledge is that because it was a planned procedure, everything was put in place before I left. So there were various people, you know, there were people that knew they were going to be overseeing this part of my role. Somebody else knew they were going to be overseeing that part of my role. So I really resent Keith saying we managed fine without her, No, other people were doing these things. Maybe it didn't impact on him, but it certainly impacted on others, and they all stepped up because it was planned in advance. And I'm so sorry, you know, if Keith thinks that I was off for all that time, if you like, by choice. But quite honestly, I feel a bit riled now that he's suggesting that I just took that time off and was sitting with my feet up. I went through an extensive invasive surgery.
I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just suggesting that since you've come back, it's been chaos. It's
actually, as soon as I came back, Keith, we went into lockdown.
Okay, that's a fair point.
I'd had a month in the office to kind of go, right, pick it all up, pick all the strands up, see where we are. But we went straight into this.
That is a fair point.
Okay, let's pause there then. So thanks everybody for all your comments and questions. They've been brilliant. Julie, is there anything else you want to pick up here at this stage?
Unmute myself. No, I think any of the sort of the other points we'll cover a little bit later on. I mean, obviously we've got quite a lot of questions and comments that have come out of the discussions, which is great. But yeah, I think we'll cover pretty much everything else as we go through, and obviously we can answer any questions as well at the end.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So could we go back to the slides then, please, and I'll pick up from there. So thank you to Maxine, Hannah and Keith.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we can. So this is a model which we developed for work with some of our client organisations around compassion at work, and I think now more than ever this is needed. And in fact, as Elaine's already mentioned, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, and I was interested to see that the Mental Health Foundation have made their theme for this week kindness, and that really sums it up as well, doesn't it? But there's a lot of evidence to show that a compassionate approach at work is not pink and fluffy. It actually gets really strong results because people feel valued and cared about. So we did quite a lot of research into this, and we came up with this Venn diagram with these 3 elements: empathy, care and action. And we did that so that the staff we work with could very easily check that they were providing a compassionate approach within conversations to colleagues, to clients, customers, and so on. So just very quickly, and it's very obvious, I know, but empathy is seeing the other person's point of view, taking the time to listen to the other person. Care, we all need to feel that our manager is concerned for us, cares about our well-being. And a really easy way to check in on people is to ask the question, what matters to you right now? And it's a really powerful question. We've been using it a lot, and it really does get people opening up and talking. And then interestingly, within compassion, there's this need for action, and it's about appropriate and timely action. So the right action, obviously at the right time. And that might be empowering the other person to take action for themselves, or of course as a manager sometimes that's within our role and we need to do that on behalf of the other person. So we've got a much more detailed model if you're interested, but that's a very quick snapshot of thinking about compassion at work, and something that our character Maxine clearly needs to demonstrate. Okay, so if we can move on from there, thank you.
Do we want to show how to do it right?
We can certainly do that now, yeah.
Julie.
So we have another version of the same conversations, and this time Maxine is taking a better approach. Not a perfect approach by any means, and I'm sure you would make some changes according to your own organisational policies, values, and so on. But in this scene, she demonstrates some skills and some empathy and care, and that's what we want to see. So, yes, Julie, if you're ready, let's play the better approach. Thank you.
Hi, Hannah. How's it going?
Yeah, okay.
Are you okay?
Yeah, it's just
You don't sound certain.
I'm fine. It's just this working from home life is actually really hard. I've never done it before.
If you don't mind me saying, you don't look okay either. Are you on your own?
No. I've moved back in with my parents because they need a bit of looking after. They're both over 70, and Dad's got the early stages of dementia, and Mum's got asthma. So
that must be very difficult, and it's worrying for you. Are they both well?
Yeah, surprisingly well actually. Dad's got his garden, and Mum's knitting and pottering about and baking.
That's great. How are you doing though?
Not good. I know I should be, because I haven't got any health problems and my job's safe, although I am worried about that. And I've got company, but I mean, I'm just in such a state.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you getting out every day for some exercise?
Well, I do the shopping because Mum and Dad can't do it, but that terrifies me, because I'm frightened that I'll bring something home and that they'll get ill and I might lose them.
I do understand that must be worrying for you. Are you staying in contact with your friends?
To be honest, I haven't got that many friends I can talk to.
Okay, well, let's look at all of this. As you said, you don't have any health problems and your job is safe. Hmm?
Yeah, for now, but I keep hearing on the news that companies are folding and going into administration.
Hannah, I can't make you any promises about the future. No one can at the moment. But for now, you have a job, okay? And we are all working and doing our best to ensure the company survives.
Maxine, can I tell you something confidentially?
Yes.
I'm not dealing well with my workload. I know the team have been covering for me, picking up all the work. I don't know what to do. I can't think straight most of the time, and I'm just so worried that they're going to get rid of me.
Hannah, I know you've not been coping well. That's why I'm calling. I want to make sure that we support you and help this to work better for you. I have every faith in you. I just think it's going to take a period of adjustment, and I'd like us to talk about what I can do that will make this easier for you while you settle into it.
I wish I'd spoken to you sooner. You've been so great about my anxiety in the past. It's just, I had no time to prepare for this, never working from home before, and then suddenly,
The important thing is that you know that you can talk to me, yeah? Now, why don't we both grab a cup of coffee and then come back online to talk through all the things that are making you feel anxious and what we might be able to do that will make you, help you to feel more in control. We can talk about support tools and ways of working and your work-life balance. Have you seen that link from HR about a wellness action plan?
No.
Right, I will forward you the link. It's something we can talk about, and it looks a good resource. But let's resume this in 10 minutes and get the kettle on, eh?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hi, Keith. How's it going?
Fine. What can I do for you this time?
Oh, I just wanted to ask you how you're getting on with that report for...
You'll be the first to know when it's ready.
Okay, that's great. In fact, I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased with the way that you've transitioned to working from home.
Well, that's why I've been asking for months if I could work from home a couple of days a week.
Well, hopefully going forward, I can open these discussions with senior management and see what we can do to make this happen for you.
Really? You do that?
Yes. I think we're all going to see big changes to the way that we work in future. You're currently demonstrating that you've embraced the changes and that you work really well this way.
Thanks. That means a lot to me, Maxine. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, is there anything you need from me?
Not really, no. As I said before, I'm a one-man department. Aside from attending the team video meeting every morning, I'm just happy to be left to it. Otherwise, it can feel like someone's constantly checking up on you.
Point taken.
Well, it's got to be taken out on you, isn't it? Keeping tabs on everyone. You don't mind me saying, you look a bit worn out.
There is some truth in that.
Right. Well, why don't you focus your energies on those who need the support? And I'll update you in the morning meetings every day.
Thank you. Take care.
Relax. Don't work too hard, eh?
Okay.
Oh, they were actually nice to each other at the end there. Okay, thanks for your comments during the video around you know, the skills and the approach that Maxine was using, and I just hope it's a useful demonstration that it's what we all need, you know, a bit of empathy, knowing that somebody's listening, those good questions. Love the idea of the circle of concern. That would be really helpful. Okay, just to finish our section off then, before we move to Julie. Oh no, someone's moved the, could we just go back a slide? Sorry. So it's just to say that on this slide, there's the links there on our website to those 2 videos. So if they're useful in the organisation you work for, then please feel free to use them. And then there's different ways you can get in touch. So thank you very much.
Jill, would you be able to just pop that link into the chat box and then people can just go straight?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I will do that straight away. Thanks.
Brilliant.
And then if we've got a link to the circle of concern, we'll make sure we'll post that as well. Sorry, show video. If not, they'll go round with the notes afterwards as well. But just sort of summarising this section before we move on to Julie, that just this emphasis on the adaptability to employees' needs, but through listening. So, you know, not making pre-assumptions, going in with your own agenda in terms of managers, but supporting them in terms of having an adaptable listening approach to their employees. New forms of performance management can reduce trust. So really thinking carefully about whether you need to go straight to a new form of performance management, or through conversation with the employee, is there another way in which performance can be monitored and kept on top of to avoid issues around trust. And that, again, it's related to your climate of trust prior to working from home in the current crisis as well. So thinking about the relationships before, what's working well, what could be enhanced, etc. And just really importantly, in terms of anxiety, is, you know, employees are looking to managers for these holding messages. And I think in the second example, we saw much more around then leadership as well, around being able to be honest and what are holding messages and how you can effectively and as transparently as possible support your employees, particularly around issues around anxiety. And just that re-emphasis that both managers, employees, leaders are going to be experiencing similar levels of anxiety as well, and thinking about where people are going for support as well, and trying to put themselves into each other's shoes. Just to help in terms of the overall climate around trust and avoiding issues around conflict or unresolved conflict. And I thought it was interesting, at the end of the chat, somebody suggested that some of these parties might need mediation. And that's, you know, so what's taking place now is going to have a legacy in relation particularly to workplace integration and issues going forward. So trying to support managers as best as possible in terms of these communications and listening to their employees is obviously so crucial during this time. Thanks, Julie.
Sorry, I was just typing out a reply to a question in the chat box about the videos. Okay, well, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. As Elaine mentioned, we did this event a week and a half ago, which frankly seems like a lifetime ago. A lot has changed in such a short period of time, and of course, we're starting to look towards a return to the workplace in whatever sort of form or approach that might look like. So, Elaine, if you would just move the slide on, if you could, thank you. So obviously we are in a period of lockdown at the moment, but as I say, we are looking towards the future. Today, we're going to sort of mainly concentrate on the present and those who are working from home. So if we can have a look at the particular issues that employers are facing, I'm going to be looking at it in particular from an employer and manager perspective. As employers, we have got a very strange situation in which we've got a number of employees all operating in very different ways, really. So we've got individuals who might be continuing to work in the office, broadly speaking, as they have been before, or at the workplace, wherever that might be, hopefully with some adjustments in terms of protecting health and safety for employees. We've now got also a huge population of the workforce working from home. Some, as we've seen, adapt well and then perhaps tail off in the case of Hannah for quite understandable reasons. Keith obviously is another kettle of fish. He's been asking to work from home for some time and then suddenly is thrown into working from home. And Marco, I think, made a very valid point in the chat box quite early on, that whilst some have probably willingly gone to work from home, there are undoubtedly others who have just been told this is what is going to happen, and or again, all for understandable reasons. We then have a group of individuals who will be working reduced or indeed altered working hours, as well as individuals who are social distancing and shielding, either because they're unwell or because they are unwell as in sick, or are unwell because they are at higher risk. And now we've got this additional body of individuals who are on furlough and inevitably feeling, well, there's a mix of different responses to furlough. Some are embracing it and, I don't know, getting jobs done around the house that perhaps they haven't otherwise done. Others are feeling perhaps a degree of rejection or insecurity and worrying, as with Hannah, about the future. Now, following the announcement just over a week ago from the Prime Minister, we have a further body within our staff, being those who might be refusing to return to the workplace, or indeed refusing to return to work from home, depending on their personal circumstances. Now, that might be a concern about health and safety. It might be that they simply, they have children who are at home and are not able as yet to return to school, and they have childcare issues, so physically cannot go into the workplace without leaving children uncared for. And of course, mentioned also that we have those who are potentially unwell. And to add to all of this is the additional complication that some or all of those individuals will be on reduced pay, which is going to be adding to the stresses and strains and anxieties that we are all experiencing. And if we can just move on the slide, Elaine, over the next couple of slides, we've got just an example of the different individual circumstances that people might be experiencing from working from home. So we've got people in flats, we've got people in, you know, houses, terrace houses, etc., etc., etc. And also we have, you know, different individual circumstances within those walls. Some will have pets, some will be missing sports. If we look at Hannah and her working environment, I think it was all very clear to see for everybody that Hannah was perched on a bed, which some 8, 9, even 10 weeks in isn't ideal. And also we've got the issues of money and family. I'm at home, I have my husband, and I have 4 quite young children who have yet to make an appearance tonight. And, you know, that does not make for a particularly comfortable or quiet working environment. And, you know, I'm very lucky, I'm in a sort of quasi office, whereas I know others are working on a dining room table or something similar. So we're all experiencing this experience in very, very different ways. So in terms of what this means for employers, well, we are all hopefully familiar with the duty of care that we owe to all of our employees. And that is a duty of care that exists regardless of where the individuals are situated. So as an employer, we have a duty of care to individuals who are working from home. We have a duty of care to individuals who are working in the workplace, and we have a duty of care to individuals who are on furlough. So in practice, what does that mean? Now, it is clear from the role play that we've seen that there is perhaps a lack of communication ongoing through Loxenbury, I think is the company, and it is something that I will repeat a number of times throughout the course of the next 20 or so minutes. Communication is really, really important, particularly during these difficult crisis times, but as a more general principle, I think it is something that employers can quite often underestimate the importance of. So in terms of the points on the slide, obviously we have what feels like constantly changing government advice, and Marco has just quite rightly made the point that the government advice isn't in all instances legislation, but quite often there is legislation that sits behind some of the guidance, at least if not all. But as an employer, regardless of whether individuals are working from home or not, or whatever their boat might be, it is important as an employer, 1, to be up to date with that government advice and guidance, 2, to show that you are up to date. And it's almost as important to demonstrate to your staff that you know what the latest advice and guidance is and that you are communicating that to them. Equally important is education of managers, and Maxine obviously is struggling on lots of different fronts, very well-meaning, but potentially needed some assistance, and there were some exchanges on the chats whilst the videos etc were being shown in terms of perhaps businesses overlooking management skills and the importance of that, and I do agree that that is important and is something that is quite often overlooked. But it's equally important, you know, that they are familiar with processes and that they are following them. So communicating that as well down the team in terms of reporting absences, obviously in the current circumstances, but also feedback on work, etc, etc, etc. Some obvious final points there, just in terms of the lockdown situation that we are in, is just in terms of keeping contact numbers and emergency contacts up to date, thinking about your approach with vulnerable groups and those who are being required to shield or social distance, and obvious points about meeting and travel management. I'm hoping that the vast majority of us on the call are not being asked to go out and have meetings with people or travel extensively, except for those who might be perhaps key workers. So in terms of those specific issues for home workers, now their approach to the situation and concerns are probably going to be slightly different from those who are on furlough, or indeed those who are in the workplace. They have a degree of control over the risk of infection, albeit that Hannah has highlighted a concern that we've probably all felt, perhaps more so at the beginning of the lockdown than now, but the trepidation, for want of a better word, of stepping outside of our own front doors, and indeed more, perhaps much worse, stepping into other environments and going to the supermarket and getting bits and pieces that we all need to continue. Risk assessments is going to be something across the board, but if we consider home workers in particular, obviously, well, I say obviously, I am guessing that Loxtonbury haven't carried out a risk assessment on Hannah or indeed Keith. Now, Hannah would be my biggest concern in relation to the particular situation. Keith looked like he was happily set up, and you know, on that basis should be reasonably okay. But we've got through the initial crisis situation, and now I've certainly seen a shift over the past 1.5 to 2 weeks in client approaches, going from how do we get this situation to work from home, who needs to be furloughed, who shouldn't be furloughed, etc., 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 to actually we now need to start to properly manage and perhaps circle back to the situations that we may well have overlooked. So as I say, risk assessments and thinking about the correct and suitable work equipment that individuals will need to continue to work from home. And it does seem likely that the work from home is going to be in place for a considerable period of time. Using the words of the PM, I think it was, you know, working from home will be in place for the foreseeable future. And, you know, I think to leave Hannah as a good example, working from her bed, is going to be storing up problems for Loxtonbury, because ultimately it is Loxtonbury's responsibility. Hannah is working from home, that is her workplace, and the employer is responsible for it. So word again appears on the slide there in terms of communication and making sure, again, showing you knowing what the government advice is, demonstrating that you've carried out with risk assessments, demonstrating that you're taking the necessary steps to move things along. And this will all be useful in terms of reassuring your staff. And I'll have a look at the importance of communication in a moment in the context of a much more sort of scientific approach. But this isn't to say that the responsibility for employees working from home is solely the employer. The employee does also have responsibilities. They have a responsibility to take reasonable care of their own health and safety. So they should be observing government guidance on social distancing. They should be observing guidance in relation to good hygiene. So, you know, one would hope that none of your staff are throwing parties with multiple people in, you know, in close proximity, etc., etc., etc. But also they have a responsibility in terms of boundaries. We've explored issues of, or briefly mentioned at least, starting earlier, finishing later. But as an employer, it's important to remember that your employees need to be reminded sometimes to switch off. Now, I'm not suggesting, Keith, that Maxine will be knocking on your video chat every few minutes and saying, you know, you need to turn off your computer, Keith, etc., etc., etc. But just some sensible guidance around switching off, regular breaks, limiting screen time. I'm my own worst enemy on this. I'm not going to say that I'm observing any of these good practice guides by any stretch of the imagination, but also, you know, Maxine quite rightly said about having breaks, taking some exercise, etc., etc. Now, Keith quite clearly demonstrated the difference between checking in and feeling like somebody is checking up. And I think it was Elaine who briefly mentioned the importance of thinking about how you've kept in touch with employees in the past. If we use my team as an example, on a weekly basis, we had a team meeting on a Tuesday. We have kept that in place during the lockdown situation. And I have slotted in one other meeting on a Thursday, which is just for the advising team, if I call them that, just to have a 5, 10, 15-minute checkup, however long it needs to be, to compare notes on any trends that we're receiving in terms of questions from clients, any changes in government guidance that we need to just compare notes on, and that sort of thing. Beyond that, I anticipate, and my team are very much aware that that is my anticipation, that they are coping with the work levels, and they know that they can reach out to me if they feel that their work levels are too high, or if they've not got enough to do, or whatever the case may be. So I've not gone full on Maxine. I might use that as an expression now. I haven't gone full on Maxine in terms of having regular meetings in the mornings and perhaps regular meetings in the afternoon, but that's going to depend on your organisation. But we also have to consider the fact that there are other distractions. Maxine's going to be using that catchphrase as well going forward, I think. Other distractions and perhaps a dip in some productivity. You know, my kids, they haven't made an appearance yet, thankfully, but they quite regularly will come in and they'll say, how's your day going, etc., etc., etc. And that's a distraction, and it does impact on my productivity. I'm not going to lock my door. Birkett Long don't expect me to lock my door. It is the situation in which we are in, and we have to recognise that as employers, and in turn that does have an impact, as I say, on our working days and our working hours. Some might be starting earlier so that they can do some homeschooling during the day and then working a little bit later. It's going to depend, and we are all obviously experiencing these things differently. So as we move on to think about the makeup and the science as such behind conversations and communication, I came across this quote when I was preparing for this event a couple of weeks ago, and it stuck with me. And I think it is very clearly demonstrated by Hannah in the video in particular. And it is that negativity will fill any gap in communication. It is human nature. That is how we are built. So if there is an absence or a vacuum in communication, your brain will automatically, I say will, for most of us, will automatically fill that void with something that is negative. So if we can just move on to the makeup of communication. It is, I think, well recognised that only 7% of communication is the words that we use. So that is email communication. You add to that 38% in terms of tone of voice, in terms of inflections, etc., etc. So that would be a telephone call. The rest of the 100%, which I'm very reliably relieved that the numbers are on the screen, is 55%, and that is body language. So that is your video chat whilst we are in this lockdown situation. And I would encourage every manager who is managing staff in a lockdown situation to think about the method of communication they are using. if you are using email and email alone, then you are losing 93% of the makeup of the communication. If, I'm not going to do the maths on this, you increase that by using telephone, or decrease that, and then you decrease it again if you're using video. But I appreciate that some employees are going to be resistant to seeing or using video for various reasons. So use that, remember that, and try and adapt whatever message, use the appropriate method of communication depending on the message that you are wanting to deliver. Remembering, of course, that you know, negativity might feed in if there are gaps, and that's regardless of the method of communication. If you don't give reassurances on the future of the business, you don't mention anything at all about it, then you know that negativity is going to feed in. So in terms of those who are working from home, we do have to think about technology and what technology to use and when. And if there is guides, then, you know, do you use Teams? Do you use Zoom? Is Zoom allowed? You know, what are the methods of communication, and how should and when they should be used? And connected with that are expectations in terms of dress codes and that type of thing. You know, I potentially should be suited and booted, and I would normally be suited and booted at such an event, but we've sort of, you know, we're working from home. I suspect we're all in our semi-casual clothes. But if there is an expectation that when you're communicating with the outside world, you should be suited and booted, if I just use that terminology, then that should be relayed by the business. That should be relayed by the employer. Also, guidance to managers. You know, I think it's fair to say that Maxine's been left to muddle through by her manager, and she can't really be criticised for that. But, you know, communication, guidance for managers about what is and isn't acceptable, what they should be doing about checking in rather than checking up, what the expectations are about communication. Ask your teams. Ask how they would prefer to be communicated. Ask how often they would like to have a check-in with you. Some will inevitably want it to be more often. Some, like Keith, might say, you know, look, just leave me to it. I'll let you know if there's a problem. We'll have the quick catch-up team meeting in the quick catch-up in the morning if you even need that. Workplace traditions. I've seen a number of comments about the sort of the need for human connection, and I completely agree with that. It is really important for businesses, teams, to observe where you can workplace traditions. So, for example, you know, if you have a pizza lunch on a Friday, or you go out for a drink on a Friday night, or whatever it might happen to be, try and maintain those connections, try and maintain those traditions through Zoom, through whatever method of video chat you're using, and provide a means for individuals to share with each other. You know, I've said this the last time we did this presentation, I've learned a lot more about people through the lockdown situation than I have in the year and a half that I've worked at Burkitt Long, because we're sharing stories about our children, we're sharing stories about our pets, we're sharing pictures of walks around, etc., etc., etc. And if you can do that, then you will help to maintain the social connection that is going to be a struggle to reconnect to people who we haven't seen in X months. These are going to be very real problems as the return to the workplace starts to recur. And really importantly, adapt to the individuals and adapt to the personalities that you have. That's so important, because ultimately, as we've seen, one approach with Keith isn't going to work with Hannah. And if you extrapolate that across the entire organisation, it's a really difficult task for managers and for employers, and we need to be supporting and making sure that we're dealing with that. So in terms of individuals who are unwell, obviously they have to comply with procedures, they have to report absence, they have to provide evidence. You know, if they're working from home, then there is a risk, if I put it like that individuals might not want to report it on the basis that they might not want to shift from perhaps being paid as normal as they're working to sick pay, or indeed being placed onto furlough. But reiterating the importance of that is going to be important. Again, communication on there is a key point, and agreeing how you will stay in touch, what method you're going to be using, and check in with people about their health and well-being. Don't just check in with people about their work. You know, it was very clear in the conversation with Hannah. Hannah was in the first one, much better in the second. You know, Hannah wasn't coping. Maxine seemed quite oblivious to that, or if she wasn't, she certainly wasn't interested in exploring it. And I think there is an issue there around a lack of confidence of managers wanting to go there and knowing how to have that conversation. And we got some great tips through the chat and the questions. I'm a solicitor, and I will always say, keep a record. Any communication that you have with any member of your team, you should make a note of it. So Maxine, if you haven't, make a quick note of your conversations with Keith and Hannah, because it's important. You may need to rely on that in the future if there is an issue around working hours, etc., or concerns that were being shared, and so on and so forth. So do keep a note, however brief, but it is important. This slide's come out slightly out of sync, and on cue, here's one of them. Right, not two of them, in fact. Right, no. Three of them. Okay. Okay, take Bear. You coming in, Gabs? You coming in quickly? No? Shy? Okay, off you go. Mommy will come and see you later. Night night.
When are you finished?
In a little while. I won't be long. All right. Night night. Off you go. Thank you. Right, I've lost my track now. So yes, we're moving into the return to normal. Elaine, if you wouldn't mind moving it on. So I mean, I've heard this since quite early on in the lockdown. Think about which parts of normal you want to return to. That is going to be really important. And I read a quote the other day. JFK had apparently done a quote about crisis, and I can't remember exactly, but it was something about the Chinese symbol for crisis is sort of problems and difficulties, and the second symbol is about in effect opportunity and optimism, and that resonated with me as well. So out of this, I am hoping that businesses are going to embrace the flexibility. We've heard Twitter already say that their employees are not going to be required to go back into the workplace. And I would encourage all of you to look at the situation, and within Burkitt Long, we are already looking at what good things have come out of this situation and what things we perhaps would prefer not to retain. And that list is surprisingly long. And I would ask you all to start to do that within the business, within the team, and to start and think about what things you want to hold on to and make sure is in the new normal, whatever that might be. But unfortunately, I think it is an inevitability that within some businesses there are going to be restructures and there are going to be redundancies. It is sad that over the past weeks, and I'm sure for many of you, you'll all have been in the same situation, we are starting to advise on redundancies, and that is an inevitability. In the notes that you will get after tonight, there is some details around the redundancy process and so on and so forth. So do have a read about that. And also, some of you might have seen opportunities. You might have an increased workload, so you might be looking to recruit. And again, there's some bits and pieces in that. Now, moving on to flexible working, very briefly, there is an expectation that a large number of staff are going to be making requests for flexible working. and I suspect Keith will be one of them. I think he's got 26 weeks service, and he can make a request to work flexibly now if he wanted. He should do it in writing, and as a business you have 3 months in which to respond to that, which includes dealing with any appeal. There used to be a much more prescribed process, but it's now 3 months from start to conclusion of the appeal, and there are only certain reasons that you can refuse. As an employer, you need to deal with it in a reasonable manner. In certain circumstances, it can be treated as withdrawn, and if certain things are not met, so not dealing with it in a reasonable manner, not having refused the request for a particular reason, employees can bring a claim within the employment tribunal. One key point is that statutory requests can only be made once every 12 months. So if an individual does not make a statutory request, i.e. they don't put in writing, they don't say that it's a statutory request, there's more details in the notes, then you can say, my recommendation would be that you confirm with them that you're dealing with it as a statutory request, and then hopefully you can say if they want to make a future request that you can refuse. Equally, in having just encouraged you all to be more flexible, you might say, actually, does it matter? Does it matter if you make another request within a 12-month period? Obviously, what you don't want to be doing is dealing with requests every week from the same person. So I think the next slide has got a list of the grounds on which you can refuse, and it has. When these requests, the statutory flexible working request came in, I challenged anyone to find a reason for refusing within that group of reasons, and that remains the case. However, the big issue for employers, and it's something that is often overlooked, is the risks of other claims. It is relatively easy to deal with a flexible working request and not get it wrong. However, because of the reasons that individuals might want to be making a request, childcare, because they're not well, because one of their family members isn't well, etc., 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 they might have a protected characteristic. So I think the next slide is sort of other risks, and the first one there is discrimination claims. If you are refusing a request to work flexibly and it relates to childcare, then you might face an indirect claim for sex discrimination. Similarly, if someone's asking for flexibility to look after an elderly relative, or because they're not well, you might find a claim for disability discrimination. And I'm sure we've all faced grievances, or say sure, there is a possibility that you will face increased grievances if flexible working requests aren't dealt with properly. And potentially individuals might resign and say that haven't dealt with it properly, that's a breach of the implied term of trust and confidence, and I am going to resign my employment and leave. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about working from home. Just on the next few slides, Birkett Long are hosting what we've called Wednesday webinars. As the name suggests, it's on a Wednesday. We're looking at issues for business and individuals arising out of COVID-19. So the one on Wednesday is terms of business and commercial contract. Are your terms of business and commercial contracts adequate? At the end of this, we will have, you should get a link to a survey. So I would ask you just to spend a few brief minutes completing that. We'd love to know how you've received this event. My contact details are there, and then I think we're on to the summary. So I think I'm over to Elaine. If Elaine's there.
I'm there, sorry. Yeah, so just to really bring it all to close then. So just thinking about the legal implications of our actions now, but of course, these sort of moral obligations about behaviours, how we're supporting employees, particularly looking just that little bit further into the future in terms of what's this all going to look like in a few months' time, the pressures on individuals and when we're brought back together as well, potentially in whatever new working sort of places and relationships that they're going to be. So how we act now will have lasting implications in terms of how we rebuild trust and enhance trust going into the future. And absolutely, as Julie said, within all of this, and a busy time for many people, I had a really great point in the chat about, of course, this is a hugely stressful time for HR, incredibly busy as well. How are we supporting each other, our own anxieties, stress and pressure at the minute? And so recognizing that context, but also, thinking about the opportunities to reflect on policies and practices and behaviours for enhanced inclusivity and well-being. There are opportunities in this as well. Hopefully as a profession we can sort of drive forward as well going forward. And I know that a number of events over the next coming months, both across all of the regions of CIPD branches, will be looking at these and supporting people in terms of these issues. I think we're here for just a couple more minutes if people have got very specific questions. Oh yeah, Julie, you might just want to mention this and talking about support and supporting HR during this time.
Yes, so the next Essex and Ipswich event, which I know some of you have already realised has gone live through the Eventbrite page, is a sort of lockdown lowdown, which is just going to be a sort of look back at the current legal landscape of the lockdown and the COVID-19 challenges, and then it'll be a short presentation, probably about 45 minutes or so. After that, we'll do just some chat and support, just to have a chat about issues that particular individuals might be facing. So hopefully, if you haven't already booked your place on that, then please do, and we'll be very happy to answer any questions or just sort of have a chat or a chance to chat and catch up. And I noticed during the chat, and I didn't have a chance to mention it, Jackie very kindly did just say that there's some really useful resources on the HSE website around working from home and risk assessments and so forth. There's also a number of online companies doing sort of training and that type of thing. There's a company that we work with, not for, Praxis 42. We've got some online videos and things like that, but there's lots of resources. And I know CIPD have done a great job in terms of making resources available to members, both, members and non-members, in fact.
Yeah, and so just a link, I think, to pretty much everything that you just said there, Julie, as well. So you've got direct link from when you get a copy of the slides, you'll be able to access that. And maybe something there for Keith as well, if he needs it, some employee support. I don't know if people have seen Flex Appeal, but this is a sort of a working mother and father team that have been very influential in terms of shifting conversations around flexible working forward, and that's sort of an online community that supports mothers and fathers and individuals, and in fact that is their message, that extending an acceptance of everybody in terms of rights to work flexibly. So additional areas of support there as well, and also links to Mind and the wellness action plans which were mentioned in the role plays as well. So yeah, I think that's just to say thank you to everybody. Thank you very much to the actors who are still there, all of the comments, to Jill, and yeah, so we've got a few minutes here that we can answer any questions. So we'll just keep an eye on the chat for the next few minutes. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. I think our 3 characters are left for the evening, but they did sign off in the chat.
Oh, great.
So thanks everybody for all the engagement, all the comments and questions. Brilliant.